Myron.
What?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about? What am I doing?
You reading them nasty books again, right, Myron?
Man, nobody reading no nasty books, man. You scared the hell out of me. What you talking about, man? Wait, I ain't did that in about 2 weeks.
You called yesterday 2 weeks. What you reading? What you reading?
You scared the goddamn book, man. Dr. EnQi. I went on Amazon and got 3 Dr. EnQi books because I'm reading about melatonin and biochemistry.
What is, Myron, that's not even a, first of all, it's not melatonin and whatever it is that you just said. It's melanin and biochemistry. You can't even pronounce the word, so how you reading? How you reading, Myron?
I'm not looking at the pictures. I know I look at the pictures. I got the books right here. I'm looking at the pictures. You know, this ain't nothing nasty about this. So what you talking about? I got all the books right here. What you talking about?
Myron, you don't even know how to read. Every time we get mail, you bring it to me. You think I don't know that?
I got hooked on Phoenix. Now, what you talking about? I was hooked on Phoenix, so I know how to read.
As of when? As of when? Because first of all, hooked on phonics, I believe it's for kids. There's no such thing as hooked on Phoenix. And if I recall, you're the same person that thought reindeer was pronounced reender, and you're the same person that thought pigeon was pronounced piggion. So it makes sense that you went to hooked on Phoenix.
Man, such a dumbass.
No,
you always trying to say somebody can't read. I know exactly what I'm talking about, man. I'm reading the books. I got the book. I got the goddamn receipt right here. I got the goddamn receipt right here for the books. What you talking about?
Well, you need to return them for somebody who know how to read them. And I still don't. It's probably all type of stuff in the inside of the books, Myron. That's how sneaky you are. Give me the books. Give me the books, Myron.
Hell no.
Give me the books, Myron. Give me the books, Myron.
I'm not giving you none. I got these books off Amazon. I'm not giving you the books. Ain't nothing. No.
Bye.
I've been in this game. Yeah. Your animals to the shit. Animal, baby.
The gods have blessed us. We must act now. We must act now to save us, to save our souls.
I'm judging. We're having a challenging hair day. All right. I had a rough day. I had a rough day yesterday. So sometimes, you know, when y'all see people pop up on the live stream, you know, you just don't know what it took them to get onto that live stream. Yeah. It's rough. It's rough. My waves was looking good yesterday, though, but by the time I got halfway through the day, the waves was crashing into the rocks. Max is back. Max, you know, I thought about you yesterday. Max. I said, where is Max? We haven't seen Max since he left that comment on the video. And that was a pretty provocative comment. So we appreciate that. And this right here is a pretty provocative question right here. I appreciate the folks that really be in the books that really be in the information, that really be in the grind. Like we in this together. You know what I'm saying? We in this together. So let's have a consistent time or day when Doc goes live so we can arm ourselves with the super chats. Max, listen. Let me tell you, Max. I know. Trust me, I know. I'm from the school of Sharita Bagby. Sharita Bagby, I don't know. She might be the best businesswoman that I'll ever meet. You know what I'm saying? Like she's dynamite in all things entrepreneurial. So, you know, it's gonna be hard to come up with some advice, some good advice anyway that I haven't heard or that I don't know. So trust me, I know that I could be a way better businessman if, you know, if I could keep to a strict schedule. I've attempted it a few times, and I always tell myself I'm working towards that goal. Like I want to have set days where we do set types of videos and blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, with as much as research and writing, it's almost impossible. You know, I'm still, you might forget, I still have 5 babies. 5, right? And their mom is a absolute deadbeat for all intents and purposes. So, you know, bless her soul, whoever she is, right? But it's just, with 5 children, it's just like almost impossible to have a planned like schedule that you'll be able to stick to. Because any given day, you know, in the new DJed school book, and that book should be out within the next day or 2, right? But in the new DJed school book, it's either in the DJed school book or the Brown 360 book. It's one of the 2 new books that's coming out, right? It's one of the 2 new books that's coming out. But I said in the book, I said, if you have more than 3 children, if you're a full-time parent and you have more than 3 children under age 10, that is equivalent to running a small emergency room. I want you to think about that. If you have more than 3 children that are under age 10 at the same time, that is the equivalent of running an emergency room. Period. And as they get older, it doesn't get easier, because when they get older, they get more risky and more difficult to manage, because they want to get into more things. You know, girls want to get into dancing and ballet and things like that. And, you know, softball and volleyball. And, you know, boys want to get into football and baseball and basketball and, you know, independent, dumb, you know, just testosterone clouding their brain. And, you know, like, man, listen, I'm trying to tell you. Yo, I'm trying to tell you, it's a full-time emergency room. Like, just when you thought, like what was that movie? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me right back in. Oh. So listen, you know, I thank God every day for the Patreon followers. And we have a big treat for the Patreon followers. We're getting ready to give away some books. So that's going to be amazing. When I say give away books, we're going to give away like email, like PDF type of files so that they could manipulate the books and do whatever they want with them. Post them on social media, chop them up, remix them into their own books. Like, yeah. So we're getting ready to give away a few books with full license to go crazy with the books. Chop them up, remix it, do whatever you want with them. You know what I'm saying? Just as a gift for being, you know. So that's gonna be dope. We're working on that. So that'll happen. We've been working on that, honestly, the last couple of weeks. So that's gonna happen. But yeah, I got my first super chat ever from Peyton. Right? That was amazing. That's probably why. Paid with no children. So, you know, hey, I love it. Shout out to High Frequency TV. Right? Shout out to High Frequency TV. I guess because this is blank, this just means this is just love because it's love for love's sake. Paying back again. EnQi is the greatest. I'm going to have to say my opinion is probably biased, but I'm probably going to agree with you on this. I don't think you're going to get any pushback. I don't think you're going to get any pushback on this here. Okay, so we get ready to go crazy with this. Yeah, we get ready to go crazy with this. Somebody started it off high frequency, and then we just got on the road. You know what? This is probably why people be doing long streams. Just remember, I do long streams for the love of the game, for the family. You know what I'm saying? Like, long before I ever had a super chat. We did 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-hour streams. But today we back on RFK. Right? Today we back on RFK. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things, but we got to get into this RFK thing. Look at this CMOS. Woo! That blue magic, boy! Stink is up. Oh, yes. We're not forgetting the Cash App. We are not forgetting the Cash App. Cash App is life. Cash App is blood. Cash App is blood. But we got to get into this RFK thing because I did the last video, right? And the last video I was talking about Roland S. Martin. Some people hadn't heard of him, you know, they wouldn't check him out, but most people know who he is. He's a lot bigger on YouTube than I am. And then Senator Alsobrook. Senator Alsobrook. And a lot of people had passionate, you know, passionate, I want to say, views, passionate views on RFK. Primarily, the passionate views were more about like the Democrat hangover. You know, people just pretty much judging them based on the fact that they don't like Republicans, or maybe they do, but they don't like Trump, or whatever the case may be. And so, you know, so he catching all those strays, and then he's, you know, because he got the itchy and scratchy, you know, because he got the voice, he can't really articulate himself, you know, in the way that we're used to, you know. And then people, I think the other thing that takes away from what he's trying to do is not only, so we having a tumultuous time period, right? People was very passionate about being pro and being anti-vaccine, right? That was a huge thing, right? Follow that up, Democrat, Republican. Like, this was probably one of the craziest, you know, elections in the last 50 years, or maybe even longer than that. Definitely the craziest in my lifetime. I'm 47. This definitely was the craziest election that I lived through. You know what I'm saying? So I think that all of that is clouding people's judgment on what he's actually trying to do, because what he's talking about is what we've been talking about. What he's talking about is what we've been talking about. And we're going to take a look at a few different things. We're going to take a look at him, right? We're going to react to it, and then we're going to move around, but we're going to come back and just, you know, we're going to kind of evolve with this. And then we're going to get into some info. We're going to see how long we're going to keep this live going. We might be here for a minute today. Let's see what happens. Hopefully I don't have any daddies, any emergencies, any fires to put out.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans. This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way until the early 1990s. Our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't.
Hold on. We gotta bring this back. He already cooking. See, he already cooking. He got that itchy and scratchy voice, or what he's saying to be resonating hard. Like if he had a different voice, because you know he got the HD quality, they got the nice, clean, fake kitchen background. You know that's not his house. You know that's not his house, right? But you know they got the nice fake kitchen, clean background, big studio. You know they're gonna do it the right way. Put the music behind it. Listen, this would be almost a tear jerker. People would almost be in tears. They would be so moved by the fact that we have somebody that's in the upper echelon of government talking like this. I think us black folks, we're having a hard time dealing with the fact that this guy is a white guy. I think we're having a really tough time with this. I really feel like and who knows? This could be God. This could be God, because you know God is a comedian. God is a comedian. You know, like he'll give you what you're asking for, but he'll wrap it up in a package that you're really not interested in. Look at me. Look at me, right? God will give you what you need, but he'll wrap it up in a package where in order for you to accept what it is that you actually need, you're still gonna have to have some growth and personal development. Like God is like the ultimate parent, right? Here's what you need, but you still gonna have to have some personal growth and development. Like I'm gonna give you, but I'm not gonna hinder your growth. I'm not gonna spoil you, right? You still gonna have to have some personal growth and development in order to be able to accept what it is that you asked for. This is what you asked for, right? Now DMX said a little bit different. He got what you came for: surgery with the chainsaw, right? But this is what we've been asking for. This is what we've been asking for. Somebody to get in government position and talk that holistic, talk that naturopathic, talk that talk. This is what we've been waiting for. You know, and so, you know, I think most of the world, I think they only see him through the lens of an anti-vaxxer or a Trump guy. And so whatever their emotions is with the vax and the Democrat, Republican, I'm able to see him stand alone, right? Because I remember when we was doing the push-up challenge and people kept sending me videos of this old, you know, they like, and all kinds of videos. Like people were sending me them with all kinds of jokes, trolling. They were like, yo, who is this old white guy with more gray hair than you, Ink? Who is this guy? I was like, oh no, he from JFK family. Like, no. He all right. I may not agree with everything he say, but he all right. You know, he's a good guy, you know. Sure, he's, you know, we all can, you know, we all trying to improve, you know. Listen, I have to tell y'all all the time, please don't judge me, because I'm still working on me, right? We all working on ourselves, you know what I'm saying? But the substance of what he's saying, do y'all know that America is ranked right now the most dangerous country to have a child in? Because of how many mothers die giving birth or right after, or how many babies get, you know, like, and I did a whole tour. With Abundance Child, and a part of that tour back in the days, if y'all know who Abundance Child is an amazing vegan chef. But what I was talking about, because I have 10 children, you know what I'm saying? So without any certifications from a school, I'm self-certified as being a hands-on father, right? Experience trumps anything else, right? So I know all types of births. I know the difference between, you know, when you get a C-section and they stitch you up, you know, against the bands of the womb versus with the bands of the womb. You know, the results are completely different. You know, just so many small, minute details over the years. You know what I'm saying? Over the years, just what to feed, you know, helping so many different women that they was told they could never have babies, right? And I didn't even know that that was possible, but that's how I got my first son, James. You know, the doctors told his moms, because she's one of those people that have her organs on the wrong side or just on the other side. Like everybody's organs, internal organs are not like uniform. Some people's are switched around, right? They're still regular healthy people, but they said that she would never have a baby. She couldn't get pregnant. But yeah, I helped a bunch of people that for a variety of different reasons, because they had untraceable inflammation in the uterus. Like they had inflammation that they couldn't figure out what it was. Just all kinds of situations over the years. So a lot of, you know, that tour, when I did that tour with Abundance, was on fertility, on what's my man's name? The father of gynecology. He got a statue down by Central Park, on 10th Street. He got a statue down there. And he was a butcher. He was a butcher. He kidnapped some black women, raped them, kept them pregnant, was doing, you know, surgeries on, it was wild. But father of gynecology, right? So you know, the thing is, here's the thing. And we have to realize how growth happens, right? Growth in real time happens on death. Growth in real time happens on top of death, right? It's not like we live in a fairy tale kind of place. And what I mean is this, because I was just having this conversation with Chase, right? We was watching a movie, and it was like an old time movie. And the people was like almost getting ran over by cars all the time. And I'm like, bro, you think that society has always been organized the way? No, people have to get killed. A lot of people have to get killed before things change, right? So when they were riding horses, there was no, like, the dirt road was basically just where people rode a lot, and so it kind of got worn, and so that was a road. But that wasn't like, they didn't like set out to build roads. Like that wasn't a thing, you know. And horses was very unhygienic, right? They don't show this in the movies. You know, you got to learn this through research, study, you know. But horses pooped a lot. Horses pooped a lot. A lot. Horses pooped a lot. I'm talking about piles and piles. When there was only horses before cars, big piles of horse poop was around. They poop all day. They're like big rats. They just eat and poop constantly. Eat and poop, eat and poop, eat and poop, eat and poop. So you got big piles of poop, right? And they, you know, shoveling the poop into corners, big piles. Like every town had a big, huge mountain of poop. Every single town. They didn't have, you know, working sewage toilet systems the way, like, so every town had big piles of poop, right? People was getting a lot of diseases. You can imagine the bugs, the smell from miles and miles around. That's how you could find a town. You could smell it, right? They didn't have burial practices like today. So a lot of the dead horses and dead animals, they was in another pile. So there was a need to find a mechanical vehicle, right? A mechanical vehicle to cut down on the physical waste, the wear and tear of the animals. Because riding horses in the movies and on TV, it looks amazing. But riding horses and using horses to pull carriages and all that, that was an incredible slavery period for the horses. Horses went through something. Horses went through something. Trust me. Horses went through something. So horses was dying fast, right? And they would just, you know, sweep them to the side, kind of, you know what I'm saying? You know, they ate some of them, you know, chop them up for meat. You know, they did, you know, so it's a wild history with horses. So, you know, so cars came about, but when cars came about, they didn't have concrete roads and streets with stop lights and stop signs and all that. They didn't have none of that. They just made the car and people was driving and then people was getting hit. Yeah, they was running over people, running over children, running over pets, running into each other. And all of the death begins, you know, the pathway to tap into ingenuity. We need designated, you know, spaces for the cars, you know, and then once you get that, you know, you still have accidents and this and that. And okay, well, we need some signs, some stop signs, and you know, let's get some directional signs like this town that way, you know, 20 miles this way and stop, slow down, school right there, church over here. Like, you know, these things develop, but they develop because people were getting mowed down and crashed and blah, 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 blah. So I'm pointing that out so that you can understand we're at a critical time period, and what we're doing is contributing to that. Like, we're making an incredible contribution. I appreciate all of y'all for all of the ways that you support, right? All of the ways that you support. And trust me, the ancestors are also thanking you because we're creating a huge contribution to this time period. It's a time capsule. You know, long after we are dead and gone, the books will still be here. Long after we dead and gone, the book's going to still be here, right? And so people will be able to build on the knowledge, right? A lot of it, we're just resurfacing after hundreds of years or maybe even thousands of years. So it's important that the knowledge resurfaces so people can build on it, right? But we're in that type of time period where lots of people are dying. And so we need some leaps forward. We have to get some leaps forward. We need some leaps forward. Lots of people are dying. And so we need some leaps forward, you know, and I think RFK, you know, he's going to be the man to help us get there. RFK is going to be the man to help us get there. Now, it might be easier for you guys to give him some credit than Trump. Because whatever RFK do, he wouldn't be in a position to do it if Trump ain't just Gestapo dictator style, like straight off the block. Like Trump came with the neighborhood energy. Like, yo, I'm hiring my mans in them. You're like, oh, Rich Paul ain't qualified. I'm hiring my mans in them. That's it. That's where we put my mans. He came in with the LeBron program. Like, yeah, I put my mans in them. Yeah. And he's talking that talk.
This is what most Americans innocently put into their bodies these days, and most alarmingly, into the bodies of their children. And it's no coincidence that Americans die earlier than Canadians or Germans or Italians or Japanese or Koreans or Australians or most any other comparable country. And it wasn't always that way until the early 1990s. Our life expectancy was the same or better than other developed countries. Then suddenly, more and more Americans began suffering from chronic diseases, from obesity, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and all kinds of autoimmune diseases. Our maternal mortality rate soared to the highest of any developed country on earth. Same with infant mortality. Like the frog in the slowly boiling water, we didn't really notice as we got sicker and sicker. We've grown now to accept chronic disease conditions as normal. But now in 2024, we're finally waking up to this cataclysm and we're asking ourselves, how in the world did this happen? A big part of it is our diet.
Now, He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. But I'm going to do it. I don't mind looking or sounding a little crazy from time to time. I don't mind it. But he's not going to take us. He's not going to take us. He's not going to do us with the Michael Jackson. Right now, we need a Michael Jackson. Do you remember when we got sick? They was messing up the food, and do you remember back in '65? This is the year 1865. 1865 is the year that it went down. All right, so that's what we got to remember. 1865. This is how the diabetes chart looked. This is how the diabetes chart looked. Almost nothing, almost nothing, almost nothing. 1865, it starts to do that. 1865. 1865 is when the diabetes chart begins to move. Until then, since back in Kemet, diabetes was a rare thing. That was not a thing that everybody was dealing with. Black folks were not guaranteed to have diabetes. Like, that was not a thing. It's this time period right here. This threw everything in the air. This threw everything in the air. Because even under the most highest levels of oppression, we still was in the herbs. We still had the plants. We still had the plants. We didn't come off of the plants until we came off the plantations. We didn't, and I'm not saying, hey, let's go back to the plantation, but what I'm saying is we didn't come off the plants until we came off the plantation. What we suffered during that time period was so crazy that we literally threw the baby out with the bathwater. We had lived a forced way for so long that we just wanted to be like, we wanted something totally different. So we threw away our good traditions in hopes of, something else, or forgetting the pain, or however you want to classify it. But this is when the needle starts to move, right? This is when the needle starts to move on diabetes. This is also when the soil begins to start dying. This is when the soil begins to start dying because we walked off the plantation. So what you have is a country basically where a captive population is responsible for the food. A captive population is responsible for growing the food and maintaining the soil. So the quality of the soil wasn't even an issue. That wasn't even something people were thinking of. The captors was thinking of how much money they can get, and they didn't have to be hands-on. So they didn't have to understand the science of the soil. They knew that the people they had captive knew the science of the soil. And as long as they had that population captive, they were going to take care of the soil. Get back there and get that stuff to doing what it's supposed to do. And they did. To this point, when they leave. They walk off the plantations, right? However it goes down, right? And they leave that behind them. So because they leave that behind them, guess what? The elders that knew how to really put their hand and put their foot into the soil, their children wasn't interested in learning. Some of the children wasn't interested in learning. Some of the parents wasn't interested in teaching because it was all a part of that time period that they wanted to get away from. So for a while, the whole science of husbandry kind of just, it vanishes. It vanishes. Now, the way soil works is you got a few more times, even if you stop taking care of it, that it'll take care of itself a little bit. You know, it'll take care of itself. It's going to gradually go. So what happens is from 1865, by the time you get another, I say another 15 years, maybe 20 years, right? Let's say 1885. By 1885, you have dust bowls. The dust bowls start happening where the soil is so arid, so dry, so dead that literally you get these dust storms 20 miles high that smother whole towns and kill like just whole towns of people. Like when you see the End Time movie and you see the big tidal wave that come over, this was made out of dirt though. 100-foot, 100-foot wave or 1,000-foot wave that smashes whole cities. This was made out of dirt though, just covering whole cities. So this winds up being a major silent contributor to the Great Depression that they don't discuss, right? This is a major silent contributor that they don't discuss because America couldn't feed itself. And all of the money in the world can't really help you if there's no food to buy. So, that's another reason in this time period, I'm gonna say from 1865 to like 1940, right? This is another reason why meat, animal products became so prevalent. Animal products became so prevalent in this time period because the soil wasn't it. The soil wasn't it. So people who had cows and pigs and they ate, right? So trying to make a long story short, in the 1940s, that's when they started to develop. Well, that's when they came out with the first ones, right? But they had been trying to figure out a solution to the Dust Bowl since they started, right? But in the 40s, the 30s, 40s, and 50s is when they start creating the chemical fertilizers. The chemical fertilizers. This gave birth to the chemical fertilizers to get the soil, to stop the dust bowls from happening. So it was really like a type of warfare. Like they was fighting back, right? Because people were getting killed. And people were losing a lot of money, whole farms and land, miles and miles of land to be covered. Like it was crazy. So fertilizer got the soil back kind of like under control. Plants start growing again, food start growing again. But the food that was growing, the plants had no immune systems. So now this is the first time these people are really understanding, like, wait, plants got immune systems? Like, so the plants was diseased, right? So the plants were diseased and sickly. So in order to replace the plant's immune system, they went back to the chemical blackboard, and then they came with pesticides. So now, for the first time ever, from the 60s, the 50s and 60s going forward, it's basically like a large scale chemical experiment on the population, right? So things are happening now to people that there is no, there's no blueprint. Because there's no point in history where we ever ate food like this before. And this is the natural food. This is the fruits and the vegetables. This is not, processed, right? Because process takes down a further road. Because once the food is processed and you remove the vitamins and minerals and those things that from a corporate perspective, you could say you're doing to try to, get a bigger profit, make the food last longer, make sure there's no starvation. You're increasing the chemicals. So the plants are grown originally with chemicals, fertilizers and pesticides and chemical, different chemical treatments to, add this quality or this, the soils have been sanitized so they don't have, the plant version of a microbiome, right? So particular bugs, fungi and bacteria that would normally add nutrients is missing. So there's just a lot of different things. And then when you go through the process, there's more chemicals added. And like every problem that popped up, instead of figuring out how to scale back and go, okay, well, maybe these problems are popping up because there's so much chemicals. What we did was just get, young ingenious minds from school and get them to focus on chemicals. So chemicals are causing the food crops, blah, 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 to do this. Solution, add more chemicals. We'll see if we can get some chemicals to neutralize these other chemicals. And, largely what's not calculated is the fact that chemicals react with one another. So, you putting a group of chemicals in this food and that food and the other food, we're forgetting that we're going to mix all that up in our belly. We're going to mix all that up in our belly, right? So this is how you get to the landscape of the 1990s, right? The landscape of the 1990s. I just wanted to give that backdrop. I know people are going to tune into the video later. They're going to miss that part, but that's how we get to this space that we are now. Because we're going to review, we're going to look at a couple of different videos. And one of the things we're going to talk about is how food lost nutrition over time, right? And it's like this history right here is always omitted. It's always omitted. And I guess it's a stain because, nobody really wants to talk about the slavery time, right? Black folks don't want to talk about it. White folks don't want to talk about it. Black folks feel pain and anger. White folks feel guilt and shame, right? So nobody wants to deal with that. This is the problem. In science, you almost have to be like Spock from Star Trek. You got to get your emotions in check. You can't let your racial views, whether they're anti-racism or pro-racism or, anti-history or pro-future, like whatever your philosophical outlook is, you can't really let that stop you from objectively applying a Cam's razor to the information that you have in front of you. We got to look at it wherever it takes us. And if the information takes us to say, however black and proud you are, your holistic hero might be an old white man, and traditionally we know we don't really do good with old white men in America. This might be an opportunity for growth. We got to deal with this, right? Because he's the only one that we got in any sort of governmental position making our chemical problem a national conversation. A national conversation. Y'all know I've been saying they need to change the food in the schools and the prison system for the last 15 years. We did a documentary at the HBCUs. We did a documentary on like black music and bands and just just the whole organic energy, you know, at Alabama State University. And what's the other school right across from Alabama State University? Anyway, we stayed on the campus for like 3 or 4 weeks, something like that, a couple of weeks. And we ate, you know, we had cards to eat at the campus, you know, unlimited, whatever we want to eat, you know, was on the college or whatever the case may be. And I couldn't believe that the same company that does like the big corporate catering was the same company that does the colleges, the same companies that do your elementary school, same company that do the prisons. And the only thing really different in the food was presentation. That's it. They spent less on packaging. They spent more on packaging for upscale, less on pack, but it was pretty much the same food. You was getting the same food. So I realized then we was in crisis. There's no way. There's no way the jails and our babies are getting the same. I said, nah, we got to figure this out. This is all cool what we doing, you know, Dr. Sabi, Robert, you know, whatever, whoever your holistic, whatever your background, like this is all good in these little pockets and circles and all that. But if they still got, you know, if they're still giving the children pizzas that Pizza Hut or Domino's wouldn't sell, like we in trouble, period. We in trouble. So, you know, this is the first time we really get to address this.
Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that
Definitely appreciate you. Ooh, I got a super chat. Okay. Yo, a super chat is like a compliment from a pretty woman. You just can't help but smile. Okay. And here goes a daddy moment. Hold on, family.
No, it's not. You called me.
Myron!
Dude, I can't stand.
Myron!
What?
What are you doing? What you doing?
What you talking about?
Boy just wanted to jump into my. He think he handsome. That's what that is right there. He think he handsome. He think he handsome.
proves the poisons in our food. A few people get very, very rich, and the toxins, and a big part of it is our diet. Restaurants that serve contaminated food are fined or shut down. But when it's the government that approves the poisons in our food, a few people get very, very rich, and the toxins end up in every supermarket aisle. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos, Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poison. Let me show you what I mean. Doritos.
Now, he didn't put this. Listen, notice he's slick with it. He didn't say anything, but if you look closely, if you look closely right here, notice that he got some vitamins and he got some of these over-the-counter drugs. Yeah.
Those Cheez-Its, Cap'n Crunch, gummy bears. Everyone knows that these are junk foods, so maybe you wouldn't be too surprised to see that the ingredients include a lot of poisons, including a harmful yellow dye called tetrazine, or yellow dye number 5. What you may not know is that this dye was originally made out of the sludge that's left over when you turn coal into coke for blast furnaces. It's called coal tar, and I've actually sued many big industries for legacy contamination of coal tar all around the country because it's so toxic and it's so harmful to the environment and human beings. A century ago, it was just an obnoxious industrial byproduct that everybody was trying to figure out ways to get rid of. One of the ways that they did that was by paving roads. But then a British chemist figured out that the coal tar could be used to derive fabric dye. And if fabric dye, why not food? Food manufacturers began using it to cover up the discoloration of low quality foods that they wanted to pass off on unsuspecting customers.
Okay. Now, we got to go to the Constitution now. We got to go to the Constitution. Not the country's Constitution, our Constitution. Right? Remember this? Remember these two books? Remember these two books? If you don't have these two books, go to Amazon now. Put these two books in your cart and check out. Right? The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. You need these. Right? Inside the Constitution, we literally had this conversation. Right? We went through the biochemistry of everything. We went through the biochemistry of everything in this book. Everything. The top illnesses, nutrients, vitamins, you name it. We even gave a great example. I'm trying to find. I will find shortly. It's one of my favorite parts of the book. It's one of my favorite parts of the book because we talk about how they do us. Man, where is this part of the book? Maybe when I can't find something in these books. Let's see. Okay, I think it's, let me see, 190. Yep. 194. Article 12, page 194. Article 12, page 194. We talked about these ingredients, right? But then we gave the example of Starburst, right? The example of Starburst. And the Starburst comparison, is not because Starburst is the only thing. It's because Starburst exemplifies the major difference between food in the States and food in people's countries where they come from. America is treated as the trap, right? The block, the job, right? Most people make money here and send it back for good living wherever they come from, which is one of the issues with people that have been kidnapped and brought here during the, you know, the quote unquote slave time, right? Is that for the most part, you don't know where you go back to. You just stuck here, right? To the point where you now have grassroots movements, whether it be Moors, Aboriginal, American Indians, FBA, all of these different groups saying, we're claiming this. This is our go back to. We go back to here, right? We're from the people before any of that happened. We're from here. We have to understand the mentality of the corporations. The corporations are owned by people. So it's cool to highlight that corporations are doing this, but in reality, it's people because they just have anonymous or private ownership. And they don't do the same. They don't treat, you know, they don't do, you know, you don't ish where you eat, right? You don't ish where you eat. You know the saying, you don't ish where you eat, right? And so, or you don't ish where you sleep. Yeah, they both work, right? So in Europe, where a lot of the wealthier families in ownership of these corporations actually live, a lot of these chemicals that we have in our food supply are illegal. They're banned. They're banned. So, and it's not like, and this is the reason why I use the Starburst. One of the reasons I use the Starburst, for example, is because it's not like there aren't healthier options to make the same thing. And Starburst is like, it's a candy, but not only is it like it's not needed, right? You don't need to have Starburst. There's no nutritional requirement for Starburst. So that makes it a much better example because it's demonstrating that we have the ability to replace corn syrup with glucose, right? So in America, Starburst is made with corn syrup. In Europe, they make it with glucose, right? And so now, if you don't know any better, you say, well, corn syrup, glucose syrup, same thing. The corn syrup turns into glucose, right? Not exactly the same thing. Same taste, not the same effect on your biochemistry. That glucose syrup is going to metabolize way faster, way easier than corn syrup. Way faster, way easier than corn syrup. Not to mention, corn syrup is going to have a super high concentration of fructose. What is fructose going to do? Fructose is going to be an invisible sugar that to this day, diabetics don't test for. So their blood sugar could be through the roof with fructose. But when they test their blood sugar, it tests as normal. So they don't know that there's still damage in the kidneys and the liver and everything else with the high levels of fructose, right? Number two, the fructose is going to stop you from being able to properly metabolize tryptophan. When you can't properly metabolize tryptophan, there goes your B3, your niacin, you know, folks in the health space get into the NMN and all of those. All of those are derivatives of B3. So if you're not metabolizing tryptophan properly, none of that's happening for you. So that's a whole family of vitamins that you will be deficient of. right? That's responsible to some extent for cellular metabolism, which plays a key role in creating cancer cells, right? Which we're going to get into hopefully if we have enough time, which plays a key role in cancer cells. So that's why cancer loves fructose. Cancers of all kinds love fructose, right? But it doesn't stop there, right? Not only is your body inhibited from, properly producing B3, niacin, and all that kind of stuff, on the flip side is hormones, right? Because the same way you have hormones that are tyrosine based, right? You have pigments that are tyrosine based. You have hormones and pigments that rely on tryptophan, right? Your serotonin, melatonin, all of that, all of your onins, all of your onins, right? If the tryptophan is inhibited, it's a wrap. If you're getting deep into the books and the research and you're hearing about, sirtuins and histones, those rely on tryptophan. If you can't process, it's a wrap. So that's just one ingredient. That's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. Just starting with their main ingredient, the sugar of the candy. Corn syrup, glucose syrup. Totally different animals, right? And then you go on. From hydrogenated oil, the vegetable fat. Again, totally different vegetable fat. We don't even I don't even have to explain how much easier vegetable fats will metabolize in your body than hydrogenated oils, right? Then the colors. The colors is from algae. The colors of the starbursts in Europe, they actually use vitamin A's for oranges, reds, and yellows. They actually use chlorophyll for blues and greens. Like, they use actual plant-based, before plant-based movement was a thing. This is just what their ingredients are. Here is yellow number 5, red number 40, blue number 1. So anyway, make sure you have these books, right?
Didn't know back then that this yellow dye, tartrazine, causes tumors, asthma, developmental delays, neurological damage, ADD, ADHD, hormone disruption, gene damage, anxiety, depression, intestinal injuries. Well, we know it now. We've known this for decades. That's why tartrazine is heavily restricted in other countries. In some countries, foods with tartrazine have a warning label that it may cause ADHD in children. Today, it's made from petroleum, not coal tar. Either way, it's crazy to add this to your kids' favorite foods. It doesn't even change the flavor. This yellow dye isn't just in junk food. It's in the foods that we consider healthy. It's in everyday kids' snacks like popcorn, mac and cheese, fruit snacks. It's in sports drinks like Gatorade and so-called vitamin water. It's even added to chicken broth, to corn, to pickles, to mustard, and to yogurt. And so, of course, our kids get sick. And we lovingly feed them chewable vitamins, which have, surprise, tartrazine. And so the cycle continues until the coughs and asthma kick in, at which point you go to pick up some cough syrup. And yeah, you guessed it, tartrazine. I've been picking on tartrazine today, but that's just one of at least 100 chemical poisons that our health agencies allow into our children's food.
Now, again, same book. You go to page 302, right? If you go to the same book, page 302, we have a list of the different origins of corporate nutrients. The different origins of corporate nutrients, right? What the natural version is, the cheapest one, and the unnatural version is the cheapest one, right? So it's not a matter of the bottom not being able to, for big companies to make profits, right? They can get very inexpensive, reds, oranges, and yellows from carrots and potatoes, sweet potatoes, right? As opposed to methanol, benzene, petroleum esters, et cetera. But we got the whole list of your vitamins and basic nutrients broken down that way in the same book, in the Constitution. So you might want to have that. You might want to have that.
You guessed it, tartrazine. I've been picking on tartrazine today, but that's just one of at least 100 chemical poisons that our health agencies allow into our children's food. I can make a video just like this to talk about red 40, BHA, BHD, potassium bromate, chemical after chemical, and on and on and on. If just one of them can cause all of these problems, imagine what they're doing in combination. That has never been studied. If we took all of these chemicals out, our nation would get healthier immediately. We'd have fewer sick days. We'd have better focus. We'd have less anxiety. Our kids would learn more easily. We'd lose weight. We'd have more energy. We'd have fewer tumors and longer lives. It's not all dark. Over the past 16 years, the government has banned 8 chemical additives that cause cancer, genetic damage, asthma, and many of the other health conditions as tartrazine does. And you know what's interesting? All 8 of those crucial steps forward in our kids' health were taken under President Trump. But the Democrats, who claim to be all about healthcare, have stood by watching other countries ban these poisons and make our kids sick, asthmatic, hyperactive, and depressed. They left them on every supermarket shelf in America. They even used your tax money to put them in your kids' school lunch. So their big food and their big ag donors probably gave them all that golden handshake and the big money hug. And their big pharma donors probably called them up and thanked them also, because now they're going to make billions selling Adderall, Prozac, and rescue inhalers. Enough is enough. President Trump and I are going to stop the mass poisoning of American children. Together, we're going to make America healthy again.
So there's that. Right? There's that. You know what I mean? That's a fact. I'll definitely be coming in with my team. That's a fact. Shout out to Peyton once again, digging in the crates. Digging in the crates. That is from the Fellow of the Craft Comedic Naturopathy book, right? One of the main 3 books of the course, right? You have to have that. If you don't have that, go add that to your Amazon cart now, right? But this is a problem. We don't get the full understanding of you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, right? That's an ominous saying to a lot of us, but in real life, that's kind of how it goes. I'm a much better father with my 5 children that I have now than I was with the first 5. And it's not because of anything except learning. I've learned, so I can do things better. You know, if God was to bless me with another 5 children, I think I'd be even better to them than I was to these, right? Just learning. You know, you just learn it. That's all it is. It's a learning process. You know what I mean? And you try not to repeat your mistakes, right? But some things you can't really learn until you experience them. So going back through the history of how we got all of the chemicals in the food, and we became dependent on chemicals to grow food, is necessary, because my father used to tell me, here's a saying my father used to tell me. He used to say, what did he say? How do you say it? The road to hell is paved with great intentions. Something to that effect. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, or made out of good intentions, or something to that effect. So, you know, I still hear his voice in my mind sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But that's kind of how things are now, right? It's each one of those steps that introduced more and more chemicals into the food. It's not like in a conspiracy theory video or movie where, you know, we thinking like there's a fat, short, bald white guy with a really big cigar and a really big chair, like just, you know, poisoning people just because, like that's problems are presented, and then a solution comes for that problem. And the solution, in a lot of times, is a short-term solution that, a part of human nature, we get accustomed to that, and we stay in that space. And now, once we get stuck and comfortable in that space, we live in that space until another problem happens. Then we come up with another band-aid, right? Just like when Alexander Fleming, you know, rediscovered antibiotics, he said, listen, this is not a cure or a solution. So, you know, don't roll this out. Because what's going to happen is the bacteria is going to adapt to this natural antibiotics. And when they adapt, they'll become resistant. And then there'll be bacteria that we have no defense against, right? We have to learn more about antibiotics and how they affect bacteria so we can perfect this before we wind up strengthening the bacteria. And where are we now? We've strengthened zillions of strains of bacteria, going crazy with antibiotics, right? But at the time being, we needed the antibiotics because people were sick. So it was let these people die or give them the antibiotics. What are we going to do? Give them the antibiotics. Fast forward decades later, now those bacteria are resistant. So now we got to make stronger antibiotics, which we know now only leads to stronger bacteria. So it's push, pull, push, pull, push, pull until we jump off the treadmill and create a permanent solution, which is somewhere in between creating solutions that bacteria can't become resistant to, right? Like iodines and silvers and some of those other things, but then also learning how to build immune systems that are more resilient to bacteria. You know what I'm saying? Wouldn't you say that was animal cruelty? I'm gonna assume Tika was talking about when we were talking about the horses. So here's the thing about animal cruelty, right? Animal cruelty So, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Because I'm not going to say like I'm a super animal person. I love my dog. I love dogs. We got a turtle. I love my turtles. The children had to kind of beat me into submission with the turtles because turtles kept, turtles wander into our pool from the river. So turtles been adopting us. Typically, I throw them back in the water, but last few years we just been, adopting them. When they get too big, we put them back out. But so I empathize with animals, and I come from the school of thought that when the Bible says we were given dominion, that meant we were supposed to be protectors, right? With that being said, it's us first. Self-preservation first. And that's kind of how the law of the land goes. As a society gets more sophisticated, as a society becomes more developed, they can get more into art, philanthropy, animal preservation, husbandry for the sake of the animals, as opposed to, how we can eat them or enslave them or have them, work for us or whatever the case may be. So by today's definition, I'm sure that will qualify as a variety of violations, not just animal cruelty. Think about like all of the diseases that people were getting because you got piles of rotten corpses and piles of poop right outside. This is at a time period where people were also throwing their urine and their poop outside, right? Because people didn't want to go walk to the outhouse, so they had buckets and things like that. It's crazy. There's no sanitation. See, we're thinking with 2025 minds. Back in these days before cars, right? We didn't have the sanitation. Like we got sanitation. Like today's Sunday. Tomorrow, a lot of people gonna be putting their trash out. Trash people gonna come pick up your trash, take it like this. As bad as our society is, as much room for improvement as we have in 1,000 different areas, it's not, it's not yesterday. It's not yesterday. So I would say at the time period, people depended on their horses. They loved their horses, right? People had real love affairs with horses, pause. Like it was, people really loved their horses, you know what I'm saying? But it was a wild time. It was a wild time, right? So, the ideas, the philosophies, even the luxuries that we have now, we just didn't have at that time. Horses are big. Where you taking a big dead horse? And horses were kind of like cars. Like everybody can't afford a car. People couldn't all afford horses, let alone somebody like disposing of them. Like who's doing that? Who's doing that? You know what I'm saying? So they just kind of got, taken out of sight. Or like the saying still exists. What do you do when the horse can't work anymore? You take them out back and shoot them. You take them out back and shoot them. Well, think about a whole town of people taking them out back and shooting them. Like that's just what it was, but that affects, that affected the whole health of everyone in the town, in the surrounding areas. You got rotten corpses right here. Your children running around, You know what I'm saying? Your children running around. They got to look at rotten corpses, breathe in the, you know, like it was, you know. So it wasn't just animal cruelty. It was people cruelty to have that kind of, you know. It's crazy. Hotep to the hoteps, right? Hotep to the hoteps. Cash App reminder. Cash App reminder. Right? Well, we went into a long tangent and I didn't go to Max's first question, right? Because then Max hit the follow-up and then we got lost in the follow-up and started to, you know, got into our bag. But I wanted to bring us back to this. So a couple of weeks ago, right? Remember I was telling you I had broke my leg. I had a little micro fracture, so I was down. And in that time period, I took a little cheap online class from Stanford or one of these schools. And I don't know how we got into the conversation, but we started talking about the Fick's equation, right? The Fick's equation for VO2 max, right? And then I came with the comedic version, right? You know, come on, don't judge me. Listen, you should have knew it was coming. The comedic version, right? But anyway, I'm saying that to say cellular respiration is like, but not just cellular respiration at every level, right? I don't know how long you guys watching have been following, but I know we got some soul crafters in here, right? So if you remember the soul craft videos, right? The soul craft videos were built around that we started in Kemet, started in our Freemason, you know, our Freemasonry and our comedic science is ever present, right? But we got into martial arts. We got into martial arts and jujitsu and respiration, right? We got into martial arts, respiration. So it's been a thing that has been a recurring because here you go. Osiris, Diabetes, and Respiration. If you do not have this book, go to Amazon, put this in your cart, check out. Right? It's not possible for us to talk about any aspect of holistic health without respiration. Period. That's just in holistic, medical, surgical, naturopathic, like any way you approach the health conversation, respiration. The spiritual space, right? You can't approach the spiritual space because literally spirit means breath. So you can't approach the spiritual space without approaching respiration, breathing, right? Breath. You can't approach sports or being an athlete or physical performance or prowess without discussing respiration, the breath, right? You can't discuss metabolic illness, diabetes, our whole movement, because respiration needs to stay coupled to metabolism, right? Respiration has to stay coupled to metabolism. So it's a fundamental aspect of we got probably 95 or 90 something. We got 90 something books on Amazon right now. There's not one book where we don't touch on respiration in some shape, form, or fashion. When you discuss pigment, primary pigment system to life is the globins. It's the globins. Before we get into, melanin this and that, it's the globins. Hemoglobin, myoglobin. Hemoglobin is your blood and your mitochondria electron transport chain. Myoglobin is in your muscle tissue, right? Primary relationship of respiration, right? Those are the engines of respiration, hemoglobin and myoglobin, right? So, we had to address that. Then from a comedic science standpoint, right? From a comedic science standpoint, respiration is their definition of life. It's their definition of life. It's their definition of beauty. It's their definition of life and their definition of beauty. The respiratory system. And their respiratory system is based on the heart, not the lungs. Right? The heart, not the lungs. Right? So from every perspective, right, we have to get into the breath. And then I've been trying as much as possible to make hypercapnia, right? Because folks be capping, right? So it's a lot of hypercapnia going on the internet, but just to make that a part of your working vocabulary, hypercapnia, right? Like the word hypoxia, we need to know hypercapnia. We need to have that on deck. Like we need to be able to hear that, speak that, flip that, bounce that. We need to know hypercapnia because we're all dealing with that at certain levels, right? And hypercapnia is one of the hidden causes to a lot of the diseases that we deal with, especially like, and sometimes I don't know, sometimes I do a better job of articulating myself than others. Sometimes my passion overtakes me and you get more emotion and less science. Sometimes I do better than others, less emotion, more science, but don't judge me. I try my best, right? But that's kind of what I was talking about when I was talking about Biggie's mom passing. And I guess just using Biggie's mom as an example, right? Because, when you get to a certain age, they say, you die from natural causes. Like, who got a funny show out? Bill Burr. I don't know if y'all watch Bill Burr. He's an acquired taste, right? But Bill Burr is hilarious. I like Bill Burr, right? But he has a new comedy show out, and it's literally his whole comedy show is based on that concept. That from like 45 to 60 is when men acceptably drop dead, right? It's acceptable for men to drop dead. And, once they get around 50, it's cool. It's accepted. Men will drop dead. And then, everybody just keep on moving like nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? Because it's expected that men will drop dead around 50. Now, if you make it past, 60, 65, you didn't drop dead. You died of natural causes. So I was cracking up. I seen it, I think yesterday or the day before yesterday. Right? It was kind of playing in the background. Of course, some sound bites of it. But this is what I was talking about, right? If you go to, it's two books. It's two books. The Clean Abs Fascia book, right? The Clean Abs Fascia book, and then the Piezoelectrochemistry book, right? So if you don't have those two books, put those two books in your cart on Amazon, Piezoelectrochemistry, and put the Clean Abs Fascia book in your cart, right? In those books, I talk specifically about the muscles, right? The muscles that are responsible for respiration, right? And this is why, going back to when I was mentioning Soulcraft, in martial arts, or in the martial arts world, right? Because there's a bunch of different types of martial arts. And then the MMA community came along and destroyed the martial arts, you know, what took them thousands of years to build up. Goofballs for hire destroyed overnight. Oh, I can knock out a black belt, so that means they don't know anything. But they had systems of knee dan versus way dan, right? And so what your practice was broken down into two categories: knee dan or way dan. Way dan was like building up the body externally. Knee dan is like building up the body internally, right? Is that backwards? Either way. So this was the primary internal building, working on the smooth muscle tissue and working on the muscles that are inside the body along with the organs, right? Because as we get older, these muscles get weaker. And so as these muscles are getting weaker, your ability to breathe goes down. Your ability to breathe goes down. And as your ability to breathe goes down, just everything goes downhill. Everything. And so fast forward, in the DJed school book, we kind of talk about, you know, the Charles Darwin theory of cancer versus, you know, the Otto Warburg theory of cancer, which is a lot more in alignment with Kemetic science, Kemetic thought. The Charles Darwin idea of cancer is genetic mutation, right? Which is still pervasive in society because so long we have heard that over and over and over and over and over again. But in the science world, that's on the way out. That's already got a kick in the butt, and that's kind of on the way out the door because they haven't been able to pinpoint any mutations that leads to cancer. Meaning, there's a bunch of mutations that all cancer cells have, but the problem is they're all different. And then some cancer cells have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 mutations before they become cancerous. Some have 20, some have 30. Some healthy functioning cells have 20 or 30 or 40 mutations and they don't become cancerous at all. So you have to take that off the table, right? Maybe not as totally take it off the table, but having that as the end all and be all for cancer is, we haven't got anywhere, right? Otto Warburg put something different on the table, which was cellular respiration. And cellular respiration makes a lot more sense. Not saying it's the end all be all, but it makes a lot more sense. It answers a lot more questions because when you look at the fact that cancer cells tend to have, 5 or 10 times the amount of, insulin receptors as a healthy cell, just some of these things, this is what brought, but we haven't really got into electricity, light, and magnetism. So it's hard to fully elucidate the details of disease that has to do with your body's energy system when we're still in a phase where science is denying that the energy system actually exists, right? So diabetes and cancer is related. Diabetes is about energy metabolism. Cancer, for the most part, is about energy utilization, right? So if energy is not a focal point in understanding and teaching, you're never really going to get to the bottom of those things. Like, so, there's that, right? So it really comes down to answer your question. What are your thoughts on breath holding exercises as well as CO2 tolerance? It really comes down to, and like I said, we talk about it in the new DJed School book, but it really comes down to muscles. It really comes down to muscles. That's why I said make sure you have those two books, the piezoelectrochemistry book and the clean abs fascia book, because it really comes down to muscles. You got to remember that muscles control all the movement in your body, all of the movement, internal movement, big movement, being able to do this, but not just being able to do stuff like this, but your heart moving, right? Your lungs expanding, right? Like there's muscles, in control of all this stuff. And so we've grown into a society where we only think about muscles in a very superficial way. The muscles that help us get a girl or a job promotion or turn ourselves into a brand because we built up muscles. Now we can advertise clothes and, protein powders and make that into a business. You know what I'm saying? Like, we forgot about the organs that run the body are either muscles themselves or rely on other muscles. So the liver, muscle, spleen, muscle, heart, muscle, right? Now you get to the lungs, perfect example. The lungs rely on a bunch of other different muscles. The lungs themselves are not muscle, but they rely on a bunch of different muscles, right? All of your core, is responsible to a greater or lesser extent for your lungs being able to expand and breathe and respire, right? You got little tiny muscles all in between your ribs, right? Your intercostals and all these little muscles that are responsible for the lungs, right? Your back muscles, your lats, right? All up under here, all of these different muscles, are responsible, and you have different, you got slow twitch, you got fast twitch in there. Type A, fast twitch type A, fast twitch type B, right? And we lose them over time. We lose them over time. And unfortunately, these are like the first muscles we lose. These are like the first muscles we lose. You know the rule too. If you don't use it, you lose it. So these are like the first muscles we lose. And the Necheru, right? God, in his infinite wisdom, has created these muscles that our breathing is responsible on. Like the way our brain and our nervous system activates them is totally different than the rest of the muscles, right? This is why we talk about that oblong square and the box inside the box, right? The Botzinger complex, right? Talk about the medulla oblongata and then the Botzinger complex inside. Because your nerves are wired differently for these respiratory muscles, right? So the way your muscles are wired in general, right, is designed so that you use a little bit of muscle, right? It's kind of like, okay, our respiratory muscles is kind of wired like how monkeys and gorillas, how their skeletal muscle is wired, right? Monkeys and gorillas, their skeletal muscle is wired totally different than ours. This is why they way stronger, right? Their skeletal muscles are designed for maximum strength output every single time. So when they use a muscle group, almost all their muscle fires. Boom! Ours is not designed like that. Our skeletal muscle was designed for us to be very articulate with our body, very articulate with our hands. So we can use a tiny, tiny bit of power and scale it all the way up to maximum muscle recruitment as needed, right? So it starts with a little bit, and as those little muscle firings is not, it's not equipped to handle the job, very quickly, more muscles start firing, right? So you can make your lift or do whatever movement you're trying to make. The respiratory muscles is different. They don't have a limit by the Henneman rule, right? So there's a Henneman rule, and it basically states that, like I just said, small to large. With your respiratory muscles, for respiration, your fast twitch, your large, your powerful, your strong muscles are used, first to be most efficient. This is the reason why, like a part of the reason you don't have to think about breathing. If we had to remember to breathe, a lot of us would be dead, right? So your body kind of takes over this job. But as our metabolic system and our respiratory system uncouple, as they uncouple, our heart rate slowly goes up, right? So our heart is supposed to be the second hand, right? God is the first, your heart is the second. That's where seconds come from. God is the first cause, your heartbeat is the second cause. God is the first cause of life, your heart beats the second cause. So a healthy heart beats 1 time a second, right? And as we get older, our heart slows down, but in real time, it's speeding up. Wait, did he just say it slows down, but it slows down, but it's speeding up because it's not able to create the spin or the push as it once was. It's getting weaker. So in order to have the same force on the same amount of blood, the amount of pumps goes up. So now, instead of having, 60 beats a minute, now, your heart's at 70 beats a minute, 80 beats a minute, 100 beats a minute. And the faster your heart is beating, the faster you're breathing. The thing is, the same way with the heart is the same thing with the lungs. It's beating faster because it's beating weaker. The lungs are breathing faster because the breaths are more shallow. and the breaths are more shallow because the heart's getting weaker, because the metabolic system is becoming uncoupled from the respiratory system. Your ability to produce nitric oxide is going down. You try to make that up in two ways: by eating sugary snacks and breathing through your mouth. The more you breathe through your mouth, the less nitric oxide you produce. The less nitric oxide you produce, the less oxygen reaches the bottom of your lungs. The less oxygen reaches the bottom of your lungs, the less oxygen crosses the pulmonary membrane. And that's what oxygenates the cells. So you just wind up having more and more shallow tissue. And as you have shallow breaths, you're using less of the respiratory muscles. As you require less of the respiratory muscles, the nerve connections recede. The muscles get less active. The muscles start to atrophy. Pretty soon, you can't have deeper. So, holistic has to include this. And this is why I was saying, respect to the OGs, but what we're doing is the first time this has ever been done. So when I be saying I'm the blueprint of what holistic health looks like, it's not, it's not me being cocky or arrogant. It's just a fact. Before me, there was no holistic teacher speaking really holistically, right? You don't have Dr. Sebi talking about martial arts and breathing patterns and pull-ups and push-ups and all of these things being combined with the herbs is just pretty much herbs, right? Or Dr. Africa had a different approach than Dr. Sebi. Dr. Sebi's approach was more holistic. Dr. Africa's approach was more naturopathic, right? When you're a naturopathic doctor, you still have a kind of a medical scientific view of things. Holistic is usually strictly herbs, roots, trees, that, right? So we're the first version of a completely holistic merger of all of these things together, right? Which is the reason why it's important to support what we're doing, but also for you to have these books and start sharing them and teaching your babies, your neighbors, your peeps on the block, your people at work, your people in school, the people in your circle, because we have to get this new outlook. Like RFK is an agent of change, right? We don't know what's coming after this 4 years, right? Usually what happens is the opposite. So he talking all that canceling the chemicals talk and woo, 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 woo. That's going to last for 4 years. Who knows what happens after this, right? So we got to get busy with the get busy. Like we got to go crazy right now. We got to go crazy right now. You know what I'm saying? But so that's hopefully I answered your question, Max. That was a good question. Right? So don't disappear, Max. Max be asking some thought-provoking some stuff and then disappear. But so CO2 tolerance, right? That's carbon tolerance, right? Carbon dioxide. It's really based on muscles, right? It's really based on muscles, your respiratory muscles, and drum roll, please, the wa scepter. Ta-da, right? Your aorta, right? Your aorta is made largely of muscles. And those muscles produce different proteins and chemicals that tonify and condition the blood, right? So before they got into this whole what is this word? Parabiosis. I think that's the word. Let's look this up and see if this is the word. Parabiosis. Let me see if this is the word. Parabiosis. Yep. Yeah. Hold on. Let's go over here real quick. Parabiosis. Parabiosis is the surgical union of two organisms developing a single shared physiological system through surgically connecting two animals. It can be proven that a secreted factor in one animal impacts the physiology of a second animal through their shared circulatory system, right? So this is called parabiosis, right? And this is where they did the studies on mice. And then that turned into a whole industry for billionaires and millionaires too, right? Folks that got a little money, right? But this is a whole fountain of youth industry where basically they began, it started with the discovery of the wasp, the aorta, right? They realized that the aorta produces like hormone peptide transmitters that basically control the youth of the organism, right? And at certain periods of your life, the chemical production changes, right? The chemical production changes and your system gets weaker, right? So without being able to, they haven't been able to resynthesize any of these chemicals or proteins or hormones in a laboratory. They're too complex, right? So they kind of gave up on, remaking them Jones and just basically said, okay, well, yeah, let's connect an old mouse to a young mouse and let's see if it works that way, right? And so they did some injections first. They saw a benefit, take blood from the young one, put it in the old one. The old one got more vitality and got younger effectively for a certain time period, like 4 months, which is your blood cycle, 120 days, right? 120. And then they're like, okay, well, let's just connect them surgically and see if this lasts. And basically it did. Only problem is, as the old mouse was getting younger, the young mouse was getting older. So effectively, they scientifically created vampirism in all, for all extents and purposes, right? The young mouse ages faster, the old mouse, but they've been doing some stuff in Hollywood with blood transfusion and things like that, where you got people, regularly doing blood transfusions. And so, but yeah, that whole industry was based on the fact that your aorta is a active organ throughout your entire body. Yeah, y'all want to go to the website, AmericanHealer.website. You get that blue magic, right? But that's what that was based on. All right. We only lost 5 people. We back. We back. We only lost 5 people. Peace to the God. Peace to the God. Nope, it wasn't the stream fault that time. It was my fault. Totally my fault. Yeah, that was totally my fault. I didn't plug in the charger. I didn't plug in the charger. My bad. My bad. All right, so let's get back to work, though. All right, where we at? All right, we kind of cooking, though. We kind of cooking. We are kind of cooking, so let's keep the cooking going. And let's check out this video. Let's check out this video. But that was a good question, Max.
Where you can find the ghost of vegetables past. Between 2 old pamphlets on farming, we stumble across a hidden gem. The food composition table from 60 years ago.
Yo, when it come down to the health information, or when it come down to the comedic science, when I tell you, these folks in France be cooking. They be cooking. Just saying.
Legend has it that vegetables were better before. So we are going to go back in time and visit the hallowed French Academy of Agriculture. Where you can find the ghost of vegetables past. Between 2 old pamphlets on farming, we stumble across a hidden gem. The food composition table from 60 years ago. It shows the exact amount of vitamins and minerals that every fruit and vegetable contained at the time of writing. So we came up with a very simple idea to compare these old statistics with those of today. This information is no longer kept in old paper books. It is now kept on the internet. We discovered a little known fact. Fruit and vegetables have lost some of their vitamins and minerals. Take green beans, for example. In 1960, they contained 65 milligrams of calcium for every 100 grams. In 2017, they contain no more than 48.5 milligrams. That's a quarter less calcium. The same thing for vitamin C, 19 milligrams at the time versus 13.6 today. One by one, we examined the 70 most consumed fruit and vegetables and compiled the results into this table. The results show a dramatic deterioration. In the space of 60 years, all 70 fruit and vegetables have lost an average of 16% of their calcium, 27% of their vitamin C, and almost less than half of their iron levels. For several years now, an American researcher has been warning us about this loss of nutrients.
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on Wix.
Wix is trolling.
Et merci à Monsieur Davis que vous pouvez applaudir.
I'm here to tell you about an important problem that many people are not aware of, nutritional declines in foods.
Donald Davis is a biochemist. He has worked at the University of Austin, Texas. We showed him our comparative table.
This looks like similar to what we find in US data and UK data.
So what do you think?
In the United States, Donald Davis analyzed the development of 43 vegetables between 1950 and 1999.
I think that most of these declines are caused by increases in yield. When yields go up, there's less nutrients per weight of the food. A lot of agriculture.
My bad. So just for the folks in the back, yield is the amount of crops that you get per space, right? So say you have a 1 mile square plot of land and you're raising carrots. And off that 1 mile plot, you get 1,000 carrots, right? As things become more expensive for you or progressive for you, you need to get more carrots off that same space, right? So now you need to go from getting 1,000 carrots to getting 1,500 or 2,000 carrots, right? Well, the soil can only hold X amount of nutrients, X amount of fertilizer, X amount of vitamins, minerals, etc. So when you grow 2,000 carrots in the space and time that you normally grow 1,000 carrots in, typically the 2,000 carrots are only going to be able to access the same amount of nutrients available. So they're going to have to divide what was already there in 1,000 carrots by 2,000. So now basically everything is going to be cut, right, in half, right? So obviously that's not, yields aren't doubling every year, but, over time, inflation hits everybody in different ways. So what they're talking about is the same inflation that's hitting us in the supermarket is hitting farmers, because a big way that farming is run in the States is, government subsidies, right? The government being able to, make sure that farmers can do what they do, and inflation hits. So over time, they've slowly got to add 5-10% extra crops here and there. That 5 or 10% comes off of nutrients, right? And this is a whole nother hit to your nutrition that doesn't even address, old school farming versus chemical farming, right? So these things one doesn't even compete with the other, and now in a lot of places, the yields have to be so high that farmers can't even afford to do like old school farming, which is more like a lot of composting, right? A lot of composting versus chemical fertilizers, right? Yeah, so the game is crazy, right? So the game is crazy.
Cultural scientists may not know about how big these effects are. This is kind of an embarrassing of they're always wanting to increase yield. If modern breeding was causing increases in flavor and increases in nutrients, I think they would talk about it a lot more.
Stop writing essays with ChatGPT.
Man, they're trying to kill us with these Jones.
Sounds too AI, so you have to rewrite it. View any site.
The tomato is one of the fruits that has seen the largest drop in nutrients, a quarter of its calcium and more than half of its vitamins. In order to understand this decline, we must trace fruit and vegetables back to their origin. Before the fruit even grows, the seed determines everything. Tomato farmers choose their seeds from these brochures. They are published by manufacturers such as Syngenta, Vilmorin, or Close. To attract farmers, they mention their size, shape, color, and, in particular, their productivity. But most importantly are the letters HF1, which signifies a first-generation hybrid. And that's how we get a hybrid. For example, let's take a plant that grows large but very pale tomatoes. We cross them with a plant whose tomatoes are red but too small. By combining these two varieties, we create what is called a hybrid, a plant that possesses both the genes of a large tomato and a bright red tomato. For 50 years, scientists from all over the world have been developing these hybridizations to create tomatoes that can withstand all sorts of bumps and bruises.
All right, so remember, we talk about Kemet being the first pioneers of creating hybrids and creating hybrids as medicinal, therapeutic agents, right? Our primary example was the watermelon, right? Our primary example was the watermelon, Baduka, right? Baduka, right? That's the name of watermelon back in Kemet. So you couldn't find a watermelon, Baduka, right? Baduka Duke, like that's what my pops and them used to call fat booties. Just, I don't know why that's relevant. My bad. But what I'm saying is, hybridizing in and of itself is not evil. It's not a wicked thing. It's not an evil thing, even though our elders, Sabi and that whole generation, they gave it to us that way because that's the way they saw it, right? I don't think they knew that we invented the hybridizing process. I don't think they knew that. I don't think they knew that, right? You got to see, we got to balance the scales with, this finger pointing. It gets crazy, right? So from my perspective, right, the problem with, designer vegetables and custom fruits and vegetables is, what is the purpose? What is the purpose? It's the same as laptops, computers, technology. What is the purpose? If the purpose is driving profits, that's where it's gonna, that's where you're gonna get into the money is the root of all evil and blah, 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 even though money is just a tool, because it's not the root of all evil. The root of all evil is a bad heart, right? What are your personal intentions? Like, what are you applying your ingenuity to? What are you applying your genius to? Are you applying your genius and ingenuity to drive profits? Or are you applying your genius and ingenuity to create healthier people, happier people, right? Are you applying your genius and ingenuity towards profits or to making, a happier, safer, planet, a healthier planet, right? What are we applying our genius and ingenuity to? What are we, what are we giving our attention to? What are we investing our time in? What are we paying attention to? Right? Paying attention, investing your time, right? Spending time, right? Investing time, right? Because if we spend our time, we invest our time in profit, right? It's a chance that we might not get the return on investment that we're looking for. If the return on investment we're looking for is healthier people, but the metric that we use is profits, we may get the profits, but not healthier people. Even though our mind, we verbally, we said, oh yeah, we want to get healthier people. But that wasn't the metric we used. The metric we used was profit. It's like certain medicines, certain drugs, right? The metric that they use for how well the drug is doing is not how many people, like they don't use for a diabetes drug. The metric is not how many people with diabetes are cured that no longer have diabetes. The metric is how well is it selling. It's the number one selling drug for 10 years straight. Oh, this is a great drug. Nobody's getting cured. Great drug though, right? So, we live in this beautiful world where, you get what you ask for, right? You get what you ask for, right? DMX said, you got what he came for. Surgery with the chainsaw. Yeah. A lot of times that's what we're getting. More options. Not better options, just more options. And hey, it might be better options for some people, right? If you've got yourself into a situation, and here's another way that money divides people, because money changes perspectives, or it gives you the option to overlook things, right? If you live in a class of people, right, where you don't have to live in the world that you profit from. If you live in a class of people and you're from a class of people where you don't have to live in the world you profit from, it's very easy for your moral compass to be very different, which is the reason why Freemasonry for years was, so prevalent amongst wealthy people, because it's very easy for wealthy people for their morals to slip, because you're making money from the masses. Your wealth is based on the masses, but you don't live amongst the masses. So when you're making these changes You're eating organic. You're eating the best of the best organic. You're not even just eating organic. You're eating, like, it's levels to it. You know, balling on a budget is, you know, commercial versus organic. But when you got the ultimate level of choice, organic is not even the top of the food chain. Because even organic food been packaged and sitting around for, like, you get to the top, you know, top options. You want to eat food every single day that was just picked, plucked, or harvested that day or the day before. That's when you're at the highest level of nutrition. And the yield from the soil is just what's enough to eat. You putting more nutrients into the soil than you pulling out with every harvest. Right? That's how the most wealthy people are eating. Right? So they're divorced from the results. And they're like, they see things like bankroll parents, you know, bankroll parents that don't raise their kids, but they pay for everything, you know. So they throw money at everything. Oh, fix this, you know, fix this for them, fix that for them, right? But they don't go to hospitals. You're not going to go into your emergency room. You're not going to, like, sprain your ankle or bust your head and you run to the emergency room. And then all of a sudden you look over and Elon Musk is on the next, you know, he was cutting some vegetables, accidentally cut his finger. So Elon Musk is in the next. You're not going to bump into Elon Musk or Kanye West in the emergency room. That's just not going to happen. Right? So that's where we have to be mindful about how these decisions are being made and who's making these decisions. Right? And this is why it's important for us to study, grab these books, and teach this information to the generation coming behind us, because voting is about having a say in selecting your decision makers of today, right? But teaching is more important than voting, because teaching is about building up the selection of the leaders of tomorrow, right? You know how they say multiple choice is no choice? Because the person that provided you with the multiple choices is the one who controlled your options. Well, by teaching the next generation, you take control of your options. You take control of the options. So now you know there's a baseline, right? And that's what we got to get. The baseline has to swing back to the human side as opposed to the banker side, right? It has to go back to the human side as opposed to the banker side. Right now, it's about bottom lines, right? And that's the trouble that we're having in hospitals. Right? That's the trouble we're having in hospitals, is that, you know, hospitals are now straight cash. It's profit, right? So it's much easier. It's almost going back to slavery. It's much easier to have a bunch of interns and nurses running around, working around the clock, than it is to have experienced, you know, attending physicians in here, you know, because they want that bread. They put the time in. They understand the system. Some of them understand the system better than they understand the human system, because they've been around so long. So you got to pay these people a certain amount of money, and they demand, you know, so you can run new bodies through, you know. So the same way emergency rooms are slowing down because they're getting congested, the medical system as a whole is getting a higher turnover. People are going through medical school. interning at hospitals and quitting. First year, second year, third year, they quitting. They out of there. They're like, nah, I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. I'm out of here. Whoop. Nurses, first year, second year, fifth year, whoop, they out of there. Right? And so the problem is the intentions. The problem's not the system, it's the intentions. Because it's easy to slip into a space where you blame capitalism, but capitalism's not the problem. Capitalism is the reward system. It's the people, right? We can't, it's like blaming guns for murders. No, it's the person pulling the trigger. It's the people behind the tool. Blaming the tool is part of the problem. We have to blame the people. And we blame the people. The next step from blame is providing solution. And that all comes back to education, right? So even this whole thing here with nutrient loss, right? This whole thing with nutrient loss is going back to this problem that we have. All right. And now from there, I want us to take a look at this guy. He has a story to tell.
Heard it. The world needs to know that chronic diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, many of these chronic diseases are not accidental. They're not, people don't get them because they're unlucky or because they have bad genes. They're caused by our diet and our lifestyle choices and our environment.
Before I let him go, I just have to stop the video real quick because that's one of my pet peeves. I hate when I hear somebody say catch cancer. Like, ugh. I know sometimes we got to use these terms depending on our audience, but whenever we get the chance, we should be able to make a difference and say, listen, you catch an infection. And yes, some types of infections can become cancerous. So technically, but cancer's developed. Cancer's developed. You're not catching it. Even if you catch an infection, you're not catching a cancer. Like we gotta, the language we use, I'm saying, my bad.
In fact, up to 90% of cancers are considered to be caused by diet, lifestyle, and environmental factors. And so the good news is there's actually a lot of your health in your control. But the problem is we're led to believe that we're victims of disease. That I think is the most egregious disservice to patients in the healthcare industry, is that they're not taught how to be well. Many doctors just shrug their shoulders and write prescription drugs.
EnQi prayer number 2. We give thanks and praise to the Most High God for the divine spark that set our cells into perpetual motion. We give thanks for the magnetism of the Most Holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and caves. We give thanks for the ability to drink clean water every 60 minutes, flooding the river of life. We give thanks that sugar has not covered our ferries and turned them into stone. We give thanks that darkness has not covered the riverbanks with calcium and turned them into stone. We give thanks that anger and fear have not turned our almonds bitter, turning our heart to stone. We give thanks for smooth sailing upstream through the valley of death, through the superior vena cava into the right atrium. We give thanks for smooth sailing around the heart through the corona crown, joining the vortex in the right atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway to the vineyard. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate to the vineyard closes. We give thanks to the Most High God that provides the light and our breath, and the light in our breath. We give thanks for the fine olfactory system that makes our grapes ripe with light. We give thanks for the Jed pillar that provides us with a stable fleet of ferry boats to dock in our vineyard. We give thanks for smooth sailing through the pulmonary vein into the storm of the left atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter closes. We give thanks for the magnetism of the most holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and our caves. Amen.
You know, they don't get better, right? They just get progressively worse. I was diagnosed with cancer at 26 in December 2003. I had abdominal pain, ended up having a colonoscopy eventually after being referred around. And they found a golf ball sized tumor in my colon. That's your large intestine. And I was told I needed surgery and then they needed to get it out of me before it would spread and kill me. And so at that moment, and at that point in my life, I was a very typical cancer patient because I didn't know anything about cancer. I said, okay, well, I guess I got to have surgery. The doctor said we got to cut it out. So I went in for surgery. About 10 days later, they took out a third of my large intestine, took out the tumor. When I woke up, they said, it's worse than we thought. You're stage 3C. You're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy. A cancer diagnosis at any age is traumatic. I mean, it can actually induce PTSD. It is life-changing. I think a lot of doctors are not sensitive enough to this fact of how incredibly stressful and traumatic the diagnosis is. So of course I was dealing with that. I have this life-threatening disease. How long am I going to live? Is this going to kill me? What is my future going to look like? Chemotherapy, the suffering, the sickness, losing my hair, all those thoughts are just swirling in your head when you get a cancer diagnosis. I initially just accepted, I guess this is my life now, and there's nothing I can do about it. I just have to do what the doctor says. This is another problem with the cancer industry, is that patients are rushed into treatment out of fear. And so they don't have any time to educate themselves, to read and research, to talk to other survivors, to get second or third opinions. Again, I was in surgery with 10 days after my diagnosis. They wanted to have me in surgery 2 days after my diagnosis. And many cancer patients are in chemo. They're starting chemo within a couple days of a diagnosis, or they're starting radiation, or they're having surgery within 2 days, 3 days, 1 day sometimes. Why are they not talking about health in the healthcare industry? or eating healthy food, like nothing, no advice. So I go home and I'm, recovering from surgery. I'm on pain medication. I'm like weaning myself off this pain medication because I just didn't like that being that way, that feeling. And as I sobered up, over the course of about a week, I really started to think about my future. And the idea of poisoning my way back to health didn't make sense to me. So I prayed about it. My wife and I are Christians, and we prayed. And I just said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, please show me. I don't know what to do. Like, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel right. I don't have peace about it. I mean, it was just a simple prayer of desperation and mixed with faith, because I really did believe that he would see me through it. And 2 days later, I got a book that was sent to me from a man in Alaska who was a friend of my dad's. And he sends me this book called God's Way to Ultimate Health. That was written by a guy named George Malcolmus, who was basically had healed himself of colon cancer with raw food and juicing about 25 years prior in the mid 70s. And I start reading his book and I was so encouraged. I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Are you telling me the body can heal cancer? It can be healed? And George made the case that the body creates cancer and the body can heal it if you give it the proper nutrients and care. And that the reason so many of us are sick is because of our diet and our lifestyle choices. And I'd never heard this. And I was so encouraged and inspired by his story. I was like, look, if this guy healed, maybe I can heal. I mean, he had colon cancer. I have colon cancer. Whatever he did, I'm going to do. I didn't even finish his book. Like, immediately went to Whole Foods, loaded up the cart with fruits and vegetables, and bought a juicer. And I was like, I'm doing this. A diet that's exclusively fruits and vegetables is an incredible healing diet. I was really curious to see what would happen if I.
All right. Now, let me stop this so we could talk about a few things. So, first reaction, right? First reaction is it's almost becoming like another pet peeve of mine to hear people say they beat cancer when they didn't beat cancer, right? At least not by my standard. And I think that's where things get miscommunicated, right? So if you have cancer and you have the cancer surgically removed, I don't consider that beating cancer. You had the cancer taken out of your body, cool, but you didn't beat cancer. A lot of people are like, yeah, I beat cancer. I did my surgery, did my chemo, and I beat cancer. You didn't beat cancer. You had it cut out and radiated or chemically neutered, right? That's not really like beating cancer, right? So what we need to know, right, at least in regard to reaction to the video, we do beat cancer like every day. Almost every day, your body develops a couple cancer cells and your body totally smashes them. If you don't have the book, Lymphatic Immunity, please go to Amazon, get the Lymphatic Immunity book, put that in your cart, get that book. Your lymphatic system is primarily responsible for this. And it's amazing how many health videos, like, there's millions of health videos. And I just be listening to these people talking and talking and talking and talking. And I'm like, yo, this is why it's so much fraud in the health industry, because nobody has even taken time to see how their body works. Most people think that poop is health, or poop, you get a detox, or, I had a good bowel movement. So it's urine. It's urine. We need to shift focus from poop to urine. Urine is the cheat code, not poop. Urine. It's not feces that's around your brain. It's fluid. It's not feces that's around your heart. It's fluid. The number 1 and number 2 causes of death is the brain and the heart. It's fluid. Changing that fluid, keeping that fluid clean, right? Relieving the pressure. When pressure builds up, high blood pressure, when pressure is building up, it's fluid creating the pressure. When your kidneys go bad, it's cleaning the fluid. That's the problem. It's the fluid. Your body's a fluid system. We got to get to this fluid way of thinking. And I think that's a part of science. Switching from the particle aspect to the wave aspect, right? Switching from seeing things more in a particle sense to more of a wave, fluid sense. And I don't mean sexuality. Pause, right? Maybe a pause is necessary there. But I'm just saying, we got to start thinking urine and not drinking urine. See, it's a slippery slope on the internet. Oh, Jesus, take the wheel. Listen, we got to get to this thing. The lymphatic system, right? We got to get to this understanding. Your lymphatic system. So, cutting out cancer, chemically attacking the cancer, radiating the cancer, those are all Band-Aids for your body not being able to do what it normally does. So your body killing cancer is a normal thing. I need you to get that. Like, it's not a rare thing. You're not Superman because your body killed cancer cells. Like, that's the regular thing. That's regular. When your body cannot kill the cancer cells, that's irregular. That's the rarity. That may happen like once or twice and then you're dead. You're out of here. Whereas, let's say, for instance, you live 100 years and die from cancer, right? Let's say you live 100 years and then you die from cancer. Well, technically, we could say that your body was killing cancer 36,000 days. Right? 36,000 days your body was killing cancer. And then came along some cells that was too tough for your body to handle. Right? And they started to collectively grow and move around in your body, right? And then, bam, you kick the bucket, right? We got to start seeing it that way. Because thinking that this is some impossible process that only a genius can, oh, you ain't curing cancer? Like, the mark of a genius. Can you cure cancer? Like, no. Your body's pretty much designed to do it every day. It just does it every day. Cancer cells get trapped in the lymph nodes, and your cells rip that thing apart. They literally dissect them joint and get as much information as they can and feed that information back to the system so your body can immediately button up whatever needs to button up. Where this cancer cell came from. Why did it come from there? How did it develop? How did it travel here? Your body get ready to button all that up. Boop, 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 boop. Back. You'll make some more cancer cells tomorrow, but not them. Right? Hopefully. Right? And so where the natural stuff comes in, right? Where the natural foods, vegetables, herbs, and things like that come in is A, getting out of the way of the body's natural processes, and then B, supplying the body with the natural compounds that it uses to does its job, right? Now, people that are purely in the herbal, vegan, naturopathic, alkaline universe, they're going to tell you that plants and things like that can kill every cancer every time. Not true. People that are purely in a, medicine surgery universe, they're going to tell you medicine and surgery can, if you catch it early enough, it can cure cancer every time. Absolutely not true. Right? Even the bar for curing is like the surgery, if you stay cancer-free 3 to 5 years, depending on the type of cancer, that means it worked. Like that's not real. Right? People want to go back to forever time. They don't want to have 3 years. They don't want to go through, So, you got to realize what it is that people are looking for. What do people mean when they hear or say the word cure, the term? Is that a commercial term? Is it applied to your health? Does it mean that you're restored to precancerous conditions? Or is there some caveats associated with it? Like just all the different understanding around the term. And then what it means to go on a vegan diet or focusing on vegetables as a means to get rid of illness, when vegetables in and of themselves are loaded with chemicals. Right? Vegetables in and of themselves, over the years, their nutrients have dropped. Right? So we're now in a place where we have to correlate that data. Right? And earlier on, when I was saying the Charles Darwin theory of cancer with mutations not holding up versus Otto Warburg getting a Nobel Prize for his work and basically proposing a whole nother theory that respiration and cellular metabolism, right? We've got to begin to look at the overall picture unbiased, right? Which is, kind of what we have the ability to do because we don't make pharmaceutical drugs, right? We're not driven by profit. Right? You got to be able to look at it through those lenses and go, okay, if the vegetables are now loaded with chemicals because we lost control of the soil, and because of the chemical addition to the soil, to the plants, that is a driver in another issue. See, one thing becomes another. With no chemicals, it's a lot less expensive to farm for the farmer. With no chemicals, it's a lot less expensive for the farmer to farm. Once the farmer has to buy X amount of pounds or gallons of these different chemicals per square mile or square acre, to get X amount of yield to produce this, the bottom line goes up. And now he's put in a space where he has to increase the amount of crops grown on the same land year over year to keep the chemicals coming in, to keep the bottom line, to stay profitable, blah, blah, blah. So less nutrients are going in, more chemicals are going in. As less nutrients go in, more chemicals go in. Disease is going up. So even the idea of the natural path is becoming adulterated, right? Even the natural path is becoming adulterated. And so this brings us back around to our guy, RFK, right? Make America Healthy Again. It's not something that can be done without what we're doing, because it takes a massive re-education effort. It takes a massive re-education effort because the schools are built on profit, the hospitals are built on profit, the medicine's built on profit, the food is built on profit, the restaurants are built on profit. Everything is driven by profit. So if I own a restaurant, it's more important for me to get the least expensive ingredients than it is for me to have healthy, to make healthy customers, right? Because you're going to get a meal here, 2 meals here. Maybe you'll get lunch here, 2-3 times a week, but your overall health is not going to be based on what you eat in my restaurant. So yeah, but my family's overall health is going to be driven by how much money my restaurant makes. So it's important for me to have a high profit margin, regardless to whatever buyer beware. You responsible for your health. So whether you buy, your lunch every day at Chez Poo Poo or at Mickey D's, you might be getting the same actual ingredients, just packaged differently, right? So that's where it becomes incumbent upon you and yours to get this information, to get this knowledge. And then remember, the beauty of most medicinal plants, the medicinal plants, is that they're wild. They don't fit into this program of shrinking nutrients every year for yield and blah, 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 blah. They're wild. So, I think the latest introduction we have to our supermarkets has been dandelion. My boys are fighting. My name is Minister EnQi. I am the naturopathic doctor and the spokesman for the Melanin Verse Diabetes Ministry. Every time you go to the supermarket without the electrician grocery shopping list, it's like putting a loaded gun to your head. Stop playing Russian roulette with your life. Help us make America great again. Learn how to save time. Learn how to save money with the electrician grocery shopping list on Amazon now. Go to Amazon now. The life you save may be your own.
Like my glorious son.
Nah.
He's so handsome.
You're trolling, boy. This guy. So Chase wants me to tell y'all about this story. He told it to me. I told him to come tell it to y'all, but he wants me to tell y'all about this story. Or about this experiment. I don't know if this is a real experiment. But it's a really good, if it's just a mental experiment or if they actually did this experiment, it's still good nonetheless. Right. he said he came across this in his studies, right? So he said a scientist took some monkeys and locked them in a room, 5 monkeys, locked them in a room, and put a ladder in the room and put a banana or some bananas at the top of the ladder, right? And every time a monkey would go to the top of the ladder and eat a banana, they would come in with scalding hot water and spray the other monkeys. So after a while, anytime a monkey would go up and eat a banana, they get sprayed with that hot water, they would jump the other monkey and beat the other monkey up. After a while, they got a little bit smarter and they stopped waiting to beat the monkey up after he got the banana and they got sprayed. Soon as a monkey got on the ladder and attempted to go get the bananas, they would jump on him, pull him off that ladder and whoop him. So after a while, the bananas start going bad because no monkeys would be able to go get the bananas without the rest of the monkeys jumping on them, whooping them. So they started to change out the monkeys. And one by one, they would switch out the monkeys. After X amount of weeks, they had switched all 5 monkeys. And the behavior never changed. Monkey try to go up the ladder and get the bananas. The other 4 monkeys jump on him, whoop him. Nobody gets to the top of the ladder to get no bananas. Now, the interesting thing is that after they switch out all the monkeys, these are now monkeys that have never been sprayed with the hot water. So in essence, they don't even know why they're jumping on the monkey when he get on the ladder. They don't even know why. They just know this is, this is their culture, so to speak. Right? So anyway, Chase told me that we had a long philosophical conversation about crabs in the barrel. From crabs in the barrel, we talked about black folks. From black folks, we talked about, American society. Then we talked about all cultures, and why people have to leave their neighborhoods a lot of times in order to be recognized with whatever it is they do. And just from habits, just discuss habits and habit forming, and being able to think outside the box, right? Being able to think outside the box. Maybe they should have destroyed the ladder. Maybe they should have destroyed the ladder, right? Yeah, we had a long conversation about it. We was on the way to the supermarket yesterday, and he was like, "Dad, tell me your thoughts on this." And I was like, this that kind of fits into because we gotta figure out a way how to break outside of these patterns that we develop based on what's been passed down to us, right? Because we're born into our hospital system. We're born into our medical system. We're born into our social economic system. We're born into our ideas of what's possible health-wise and what's not, which is one of the reasons why people at 50 nowadays look way different than people at 50 did in the 90s. In the 90s, your family was picking out your coffin at 50. You was retiring at 55, dead at 60, 65. Now, you got Hassan Campbell. I know you're like, wait, how did Hassan Campbell fit into this conversation? This is an interesting story. Listen, I got to bring Hassan Campbell into this. I know we got people watching from all over the place, so y'all may not know who the rapper MAHA is. It's a crazy world we live in where more people on the internet may know Hassan Campbell and than the rapper MAHA, because he's had some hits. But the thing is this, right? Rapper MAHA and Hassan Campbell are beefing, right? They're beefing right now, back and forth on the internet, because Hassan Campbell, as usual, thought it was his place to call out MAHA, because MAHA is 50 years old, or around 50. I think he's a little older than 50, but he's around 50 years old, and he's still in the club performing rap songs, right? I seen it, it was brought to my attention. And for me, we need a perspective shift. We need a perspective shift. Rap music in and of itself is only about 50 years old. So the idea that it's a young man's thing is incorrect, right? In and of itself is a new genre. But for me, from the health standpoint, being old enough to remember people at 50 years old walking on canes, to now seeing people at 50 being able to be in the club at 50, if you want to, able to play basketball with your children, I think we have to change our perspective, right? We're looking at Stephen A. Smith, and I know I might be all over the place for a second, but this is, different ideas we need to look at. Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James going back and forth on the internet right now. Most people that don't really pay attention to it, they think that LeBron was out of pocket for running up on Stephen A. Smith because Stephen A. Smith was critiquing Bronny. That's not what Stephen A. Smith was doing. LeBron ran up on Stephen A. Smith because Stephen A. Smith said he was doing a bad job as a father, right? And so, again, we have to have a change in perspective, because here's my take on it. And my take is totally original, because most people that are in the space to make a comment on the sports, they're tied to sports entities for their money. So they can't really make the real commentary that needs to be made. Stephen A. Smith is a Michael Jordan guy. The LeBron and Michael Jordan conversation that is disguised as a conversation about who's the GOAT, when really it's a commercial conversation to keep the Michael Jordan brand viable. Has nothing to do with basketball, right? But my point is this. In the world that we live in, right? And I know y'all see Umar Johnson's daughter, right? I know y'all see Umar Johnson's daughter. In the world that we live in, you got a voice on the internet. Why would you say LeBron is doing a bad job as a father for over encouraging his son who's now an NBA player, as opposed to like Stephen A. Smith? Why aren't you spending more time talking about Michael Jordan's son, who's snorting crack and smoking crack and snorting cocaine? You see what I'm saying? Like if you just want to be like, if Stephen A. Smith want to be like, well, I'm just calling it as I see it. It's a lot more to be seen. You're critiquing LeBron more harsh for getting his son to the NBA than you are critiquing Michael Jordan for getting his son like hooked on cocaine. Right? So we in a world where, we got a father problem. So, we got to change our perspective on a lot of things. And I think that's how we have to approach this whole health thing. We've got to change our perspective. I know y'all like, EnQi, you wilding with the Hassan Campbell and LeBron thing. I'm not. I'm telling you, we have to have a fresh perspective. We're repeating things that's given to us. We're repeating ideas that's given to us without doing the math. So that's why I kind of like the monkey story. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I don't know whether the 5-monkey experiment was actually done on 5 real monkeys or whether it was a thought experiment, a well thought out thought experiment, but it's solid. And I think that what we're doing, if we go back to understanding how the food got chemicalized in the first place, starting in 1865, 1880s, 1890s, to the advent of the chemical fertilizers and pesticides, I think the problem is that we keep trying to solve the problem with the same type of solution, right? We keep trying to be the person to invent the new chemical that's going to create the $1 billion patent. Woo, 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 woo. And the solution is not the $1 billion. Like, we got to get off that, right? We got to get on the billion person solution, right? The 1 billion person solution. Umar got a daughter. Yo, nah, I'm dead. That cannot be what you got from all that. That cannot be what you got from all that. My man said, Umar got a daughter? Umar is a deadbeat dad. Umar is a deadbeat dad. I used to live in Philadelphia, right? I used to live in Philadelphia. So we know that Umar is a deadbeat. Like, that's not a new thing for us. It's crazy that, but Umar's not alone. The conscious community, these online guys, it's a bunch of these guys that's deadbeat dads. A bunch of these guys. And that's the craziest part. But I call folks out and they say I'm hating. Folks don't, EnQi be talking about that negativity. I don't want to see that negativity. But it's a lot of these guys are deadbeat dads. Period. But Umar has a situation now where one of his daughters is online and it's crazy. Listen, after we end this live, you could go search it up. I ain't going deep into it, but I used to live in Philly. So we know a lot more than we'd like to. You know what I'm saying? We know a lot more than we'd like to. But Umar's never really been about no children. Umar's not about no children. Period. He doesn't have a personality that's conducive to raising children, which is, anticlimactic to what his public goals are, creating a school where he's going to be raising other folks' children. Like, bruh. And he's got that one video clip floating around, like Poetic Flacco, I think, put the video up, where Umar was saying somewhere like, yo, in the future, I want my daughter to see this clip because she might in the future wonder why we didn't spend time and blah, 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 blah. And people are trying to use that clip like, oh, he must have been talking about this daughter. That clip is not even about this daughter. That's how crazy this is. But listen, like I said, I'm a better father with my second 5 than I was with my first. So hopefully God works on his heart and changes his heart. And, you know, he realizes that he's still alive. That's the main thing. Different perspective. Umar just need to realize that he's still alive. You still alive, bro. You know, I don't know if he watches, but somebody that watches me watches him. So tell Umar, you are still alive. That means you still have an opportunity to rewrite those narratives. Yesterday is already gone. There's no way to get it back. But you can create more tomorrows. You know, and that's why we write the books. That's why we need the support, because that's what we're trying to do with this information, is create some more tomorrows. And that's why it may seem like, you know, for some people, they be trolling me. They be trolling me like, yo, you trolling with RFK. And I'm like, we got a window here. We got a 4-year window here. We can work. We can make some change here in these quick 4 years. Change that can't be undone afterwards, regardless to what happens, right? Because once more people are aware, we get the 5 monkey syndrome with righteousness. Because see, the behavior pattern in the 5 monkey story, it's not always, you know, you can't just look at it from a negative perspective, right? Because, you know, curiosity killed the cat in a lot of ways. When our grandparents and great-grandparents passed us down powerful traditions with different herbs and teas, and we ignored them because they couldn't articulate why good enough for us, right? We need things explained to us in super detail. You know, we want to know chemical, you know, we want biochemistry. We want to know how the biochemistry interfaces with our tissues and cells and blah, 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 blah. We want to know a lot of specifics before we do the right thing, where we don't need no information in order to do the wrong thing. We don't need no information in order to do the wrong thing. Case in point, you try to introduce my detox capsules. Try to get somebody on your job to take those chemiluminescence capsules. They're going to want to know who I am, where I'm from, what's all the ingredients in there, who made it, what country. Like, they're going to ask you 10,000 questions about those things before they agree to try them. On the flip side, come to your job with some lasagna. Come to your job with some lasagna. Come to your job with some cheeseburgers. So come to your job with some barbecue. Nobody's going to ask you where the sauce came from. Nobody's going to ask you where the sugar came from, where the ketchup. What's in that ketchup? Who made that ketchup? Where they package that ketchup? How many chemicals in that ketchup? How many chemicals are they legally responsible to reveal to us? How many can they keep secret? Anybody gonna ask them questions? Go to your supermarket. Nobody is in the aisles reading the ingredients. If you in the aisle reading the ingredients, they're gonna look at you crazy, like you holding up traffic. You in the way. So we need a lot of encouragement to do the wrong thing, to do the right thing rather. And we need very little encouragement to do the wrong thing. You know, so we have to be the generation that creates new type of thinking patterns, right? New type of thinking patterns. We need Stephen A. Smith to be talking about how amazing of a father LeBron is, because LeBron didn't have a father. LeBron came off the block. Crack, coke, like LeBron came from that. No father. Stayed out of trouble. No Dracos and kilos. None of that what we listening to. And even though you hear LeBron listening to, we don't see LeBron. LeBron ain't got caught in none of that. No gang, nothing, no nothing. Straight to the league, taking care of business, basketball. And since all he knew was basketball, the only way he knew how to take care of his children and keep them out of trouble and on the straight and narrow is basketball. So we need people talking about LeBron as an excellent example of being a father. Yeah. He came out the hood. He didn't go to college, but he got his son a little bit of college. And hey, he got him an NBA contract. Now, if he don't never get another extension after his first 3-4 years, hey, he got him there. Right? He got him there. That need to be applauded. Yeah, you stayed out of trouble and kept your boy out of trouble. Right? I mean, they did catch Bronny smoking some weed on the internet one time, I think. I think they caught Bronny blowing a little trees one time. You know. That was on the internet. Right? Great father. Right? We need those type of conversations because what we need is to 5-monkey that program. Right? We need to 5-monkey that program. We need to 5-monkey that old school. That's back to the Kemetic way of doing things. Remember, back in Kemet, trades were inherited. Trade was inherited. If your dad was a priest, chances are you was going to be a priest. Yeah. If your dad was a mason, chances are you was a mason. If your dad was a doctor, chances are you would be a doctor. So I don't think anything is wrong with this, especially if we look at the other guy. If we look at Michael Jordan, okay, boom. So your dad was arguably the greatest basketball player ever, and you are a cokehead. I think Stephen A, we just gotta, flip the perspectives around, right? Mano is, running around with 25 years old in the club, moving around, but guess what? Mano looks like he's taking care of himself. He looks like he's taking care of himself. Like that's the thing. I lost close friends in their 30s and 40s. You know what I'm saying? They children are fatherless. They children are fatherless. They don't have a dad to go with them to the club. Right? I look forward to going to the club with my babies. Yeah. I want to go to the club with them for the first time, to the bar with them for the first time, to a concert for the first time, play basketball, football, baseball, volleyball, golf, whatever they're interested in. I want to be able to I want to be in condition enough to accompany them there. Right? And let that be your inspiration. Right? If we don't have enough inspiration to do the right thing on our own, let love be your guide. Right? Love your children enough to just want to be in shape enough to relive your childhood with them. Right?